All right, good afternoon. Right, so today would be our last chapter for your quantitative research assignment, right? So we have almost covered each and every chapter that's very how to write, basically how to develop your research, right? How to design them, right? How to formulate your research questions, right? And how to come up with your hypothesis, how to operationalize them, and everything that's evolved. That are related, right? To your quantitative research, right? So now this is the final part, right, where you are assembling, right, your entire data, right, from chapter 1 up until chapter 5, right? The primary skeleton will be chapter 1 until chapter 5, right? Normally chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 is very much straightforward, right? If let's say, for example, if we take as we have seen earlier, right, in previous lectures, right? For instance, in chapter 1 you just lay down, right, where you do your background researches to establish, right, to inform your readers what is this about, right? What are you aiming to achieve from this research, right? What is the topic, right? Background to this topic, and so on and so forth. Chapter 2 is more on literature review, right? You go through existing literatures, right, about your research topic, right? What has been done, right? In which way, right? Using which methodology, and so on and so forth. And then followed by chapter 3, which talks about your methodology specifically, right? How you're going to conduct this research, right? What are the right analysis, right? What are you focusing, and so on and so forth, including theoretical framework and so on. Right, so now comes the most important part in your research, which is chapter 4 and chapter 5, right? Here you are one is displaying your data, or elaborating your data, right? Showing your data to your readers, right? What have you found from your research, right? What has been gathered, right? What is it showing, right? What is the pattern that has emerged from your research that you have done, right? What is the image that is being shown by your by the data that you have collected, right? And then chapter 5 is where you do your analysis, right? You are interpreting your data according to what you have found, right? Saying this means this, right? Whether you are validating, accepting, or rejecting your hypothesis based on the data that you have researched, right? Chapter 1 to chapter 3 is more straightforward. Chapter 4 is also very straightforward, right? Where we call findings of the findings of the research, right? In Malay we call it hasil kajian, right? You display your data, right? Whether it's in graph form, pie chart, bar chart, whatever it is, right? You display, you explain, right? Whether it is, right? Whether, let's say, for in comparison, right? You are doing a research comparing between and let's say coffee bean, right? Lipton tea and white coffee, for instance, right? Then you are showing that this much of people have been focusing on prefers Lipton over coffee, white coffee, and so on and so forth. Right? How you're going to display, right? So your readers, right? So we'll look into very simple, right? We don't have much slides anyway, right? Because the writing process is very dynamic, right? It changes according to your data, but the basic flow would be as what we're going to see now, right? For today's lecture, right? So goals of writing up social research. Remember, you are not doing a scientific research, right? You are still bounded by social research, which means you are documenting, explaining, elaborating, finding reasons for what is happening in the society, right, surrounding us. So you are giving a scientific explanation, right, by linking up connections and so on and so forth, right? To define what is happening, to explain what is the problem, to explain the root cause of the problem for you, and where it is affects, and right, and so on and so forth. Right. So one is to document your results, right? The goal is to document your results, right? Because it is valuable, right? It is important and pertinent for the society. So that is why you are conducting a social research. Therefore you are documenting your results, right? And then secondly, to show how you proceeded during your research, how you arrived at your result, right? This is more of your the process that you have embarked, right, which justifies and validates right, research, right? How you began, right? What is your idea? What is your hypothesis, right? What have you done, right? What are the steps taken, right, for you to arrive to this conclusion and results, right? How you can conclude that this is the explanation, so this is the findings of my research, right? You have to explain that, right? To present your results, of course, right? To achieve specific object, to present results that shows that you have achieved your specific objective, right? Like proving your hypothesis, right? Whether there's a correlation between factor A and factor B, for instance, right? And then to legitimize the research in some way, showing that the results are not arbitrary but rigorous based on data, which means the research is done professionally, right? They are scientific, not scientific, sorry, they are empirical evidences, right? And then not arbitrary in the sense that it is not like based on my own pure assumptions, right? It's not that something like I tembak ikut suka hati, right? That's basically what is arbitrary, right? So rather than being arbitrary, right, it's more on rigorously based on data, right? You have conducted your surveys, you have conducted your questionnaires, right? You have taken observation, for instance, right? You have sat and observed what people are doing in Johntown, right? These are all data which gives you the legitimacy, right, to come to this point, right, to say that this is because of that, this is because of this is happening in this ways and such, right? So writing up quantitative research, right, will normally include the following elements, right? Basic skeleton, right? Research problem, right? You define what is the problem, right? Remember you stated that in your problem statement, right? Explain what is the problem and why you're conducting a research, right? Explain what is the problem, right? What is the issue behind that you are interested to explore, right? Maybe like for instance, right, we talk about poverty and so on, right? Or more simpler topics like one of you have said. I think the previous semester one say wanted to find which music platforms is much preferred by the students, right? So what is the issue behind that? Is that a problem, right? Are people shifting from, let's say, MP3 from internet that has been already happening, right? It has already happened, right? Some kind of issue that drives you to conduct the research, right? If not, it's like merely describing what is already known, right, to public knowledge already. Conceptual framework, right? What is the concept that you are dealing with, right? Maybe the concept is about, let's say, you're finding maybe yours is more on exploratory, right? New areas that has not been explored before, right? So that is the concept. Maybe your concept is about racism, right? How many percentage of people are being declined of housing opportunities, right? Rental opportunities because of their ethnicity, right? So some kind, what is the concept, the overall concept of your research? And then research question, obviously, right? You need a solid research questions, right? These are the questions that you are trying to answer through research, right? That is your key question, right? That is the key that is the key points that would lead you to design what kind of method you are going to use, data accumulation you're going to use, right? How you're going to do your analysis and so on and so forth, right? Choices of your samples, right? Your respondents, right? And then method, as I say, method of data collection, and then analysis of the data, right? How you're going to do the analysis, right? Which kind of analysis, content analysis, textual analysis, and so on and so forth, right? Conclusion, right? The final chapter, right? In conclusion, normally, in method of data collection, you have to elaborate what method have you used and how you are using it, right? And its relevance to your in analysis. You explain, right, your findings based on the context, right, and based on the data that you have received, right, and then link it back to the context, right, contextualizing your data, and that would basically lead you to do the analysis. And then conclusion. In conclusion, normally you summarize the entire chapter, the entire paper, and then you can give your recommendations, all right, to future researchers maybe, right? These are the parts that I've left out, right, which can be pursued by future researchers and so on, right? Recommendation, the shortcomings and so on, and then discussion, of course, discussing your results, right? And then the empirical procedure, right? Following questions should be addressed, right? Basically, what type of study have you conducted, right? Like what I say, is it aiming to be a is the aim of the study is to explore it, right? To explore or to explain or to find relationships, right? Correlational studies, right? Or longitudinal, what kind of studies is it basically, right? Normally, social science will try to be exploratory or explaining, right? Explanatory, right? So how exactly did you collect the data, right? Study design, type of survey, right? This all will be explained in chapter 3, basically, right? Some examiners or some supervisors wouldn't press too much on methodology, right? As long as you are able to explain how you did it, right? And what is the method that you've chosen, right? Because more importantly, what kind of theories that have used to do to analyze your data, that would be more relevant. I mean, that would be more important compared to your methodology. Right? How are variables measured? Right? Are the measures reliable and valid? Right? If they are not reliable and if they are not valid, right? If there are discrepancies, right, then there might be problem, right? If there are shortfalls, right, people wouldn't believe your findings, right? Your findings would be questioned, right? There would be a loophole in your findings, therefore might be rejected by your examiners and so on, by VA and so on. Right, so what is your sample? How many subjects or respondents are involved in your study, right? How did you select them? Right, this all has to be explained in chapter 3, methodology, right? How did you issues and ethical issues and specific content of the design, right? Whether you have ethical clearance from your campus, right, from your university, whether you have seeked for permission, right, seeking consent from your respondent, right? How you're using third-party sources, right? Whether you're quoting them, right? Citations, right? And so on and so forth, lah. Right, and then elaboration of results is to provide a number of detailed findings, right? You can either put it in chapter 4 or you can put it as your reference, right? Lampiran, right? You can put it behind, right? In footnote. If it's not directly relevant, or if not directly relevant to your research, you can put it as a footnote or endnote, right? These are the softwares that you can use to make sure your research is rich enough, right? So if let's say it's like sounds assumptions, sounds too good to be true, then you have endnote, you have cited them, then people would be able, it would be easier for them to believe whatever has been written there, right? Then distill, extrapolate, or construct the fundamental results that emerge from the data findings, right? You're already filtering your data, right, which is directly relevant, and then you only discuss the major things about your data, right? You are not going to say from A to Z about, I mean, from A to Z everything about your data, right? You are going to pick and choose to explain very significant things, right? Maybe the highest factor, lowest factor, the middle, maybe the average factors, right? Like for instance, if you take an example, let's say 100 people say they like Lipton tea because it is cheaper, right? Then you explain why cheaper is the why being cheap why Lipton is being preferred by a lot of people. Then you explain about the cheap prices compared to its competitor, right? And then go and so on and so forth, right? So that's how you build your argument, build your data discussion, right? And then presenting your results, obviously there are many ways, right? From graph to bar chart. If the numbers are too high, right, you have frequency numbers can often, if you're too high, if too much, right, normally you can opt to what you call smart arts, right? Graph and so on and so forth, right? Which would make it easier, right, for your readers to see and observe them, right, rather than too much of words, right? Despite that, it is still the responsibility of the researcher, the author to explain, right, the major part. Let's say, for example, here, right, you see smartphones and tablets, right? Let's just focus on smartphones. You find that people use 35% for games, and then maybe news for 3%. Then you want to explain about these two only, right? Or maybe there are many other factors beside this why people use smartphones, and you don't want to explain about them, but only the major thing, games and maybe social networking and music videos, right, for instance. Or you explain everything about this, right, because basically your thesis will be pretty what do you call, thick, right? So you can spend time to explain them, right? And then you can choose to simplify it through graph and so on and so forth, right? So that would basically about producing your quantitative research report. But besides that, you also must be careful about format, right, which is very important. If you're using APA, please make sure that you follow the same format throughout your research, from citation, from paraphrasing, from right, quotation, right, and then the final bibliography, right, has to be consistent, right? If you're using some other Chicago, for instance, or MLA, for instance, right, you have to be consistent, right? That's one. Apart from that, do your proofreading, right, before sending to your examiner, your supervisor. Make sure proofreading has been done, right? You don't want to send a half-baked research that is not professional enough, right, in terms of language and so on, to be read by your professors or your, no, basically your examiners, right? You don't want them to be rejected after spending so much of time accumulating your data and all that, and then seeing that it has been rejected for being what you call language deficiency, right? It could be troubling, right? So these are the things that you have to bear in mind, right? So that would be it, right? So happy writing. So that would be it. Thanks.